Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azawi. For 35 years, the Ba'ath Party, associated with Saddam Hussein, ruled Iraq with an iron fist. Today, the party no longer exists, and former members were barred from running for office after the 2003 war. But last year, a law was passed relaxing some of the restrictions on former Baathists. It allowed thousands of former party members to apply for reinstatement in the civil service and military. The U.S. administration praised the law, saying it was an important step towards national reconciliation. But some Iraqis fear the law opened the door for former Baathists to return to positions of influence. So with parliamentary elections possibly on the horizon, should Iraq's fledgling democratic process be opened up to the former supporters of Saddam Hussein? To discuss the reasons for the exclusion of Baathists from political life, I'm delighted to welcome from London Abdelbari Atwan, Editor-in-Chief of Al-Quds Al-Arabi, and from Baghdad, Saad al-Mattalibi, an international affairs advisor at the Ministry of National Dialogue. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Saad al-Mattalibi, excluding the Baathists from running to power, to some people smacks nothing more than vengeance. To others, it's a fear of a well-organized party. Given the chance, it might come back with vengeance for political as well as social influence.
Many people have a different view to that introduction, because the Ba'ath Party, without talking about persons, personality or individuals, as a thought, as a school of thought, believes in attaining power through coups and through conspiracies. Once they're in power, they believe in excluding everybody and dictating their way or their vision upon society. This in itself cannot be accepted in new Iraq, where we have multiple political ideologies and multiple political views, and they can compete in a peaceful manner, and allowing the voters to be the decider on who is elected and who is not.
Abdelbari, the Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, has warned of upcoming Ba'athist parliament, he said, and I'm going to use all my constitutional powers to stop them. Are these scare tactics, or is he genuinely scared that they might come back?
You know, Dr. Saad talked about exclusion, and he accused of the Baathists of excluding other ideology or other thoughts in Iraq during their rules. And al-Maliki and Dr. Saad are applying the same in such a democratic Iraq. So what's the difference here? I believe if you are looking for a national reconciliation, if you are looking at rebuilding the country again, I think you need everybody. You need all the color of the shade. We know that some Baathists were dangerous. They are locked or executed or tried. But the rest of the Ba'athist people are Iraqis, and they have the right to be part of the new Iraq like everybody else. It is true there are some sides of the Ba'ath, the Ba'athist ideology, which is bad. For example, the dictatorship. But there are other sides which I believe are very bright. For example, secularism, the equality between men and women, the education, the scientific achievement, universities, good health service,
Let me run this
good
by
education.
Saad,
So we cannot actually exclude all this.
Saad, you are practicing exactly what Saddam Hussein practiced against the other political parties. You're excluding just as much he did.
I don't think that really applies here. Looking at the history of the 35 years the Ba'ath Party ruled in Iraq, we are not excluding individuals. We are trying to prevent a particular school of thought from entering and wrecking the political process. If you look at today's Iraqi parliament, there are many Baathists who are actually serving today as members of parliament. The difference is that those people believed in the new national principles of Iraq. They believe in democracy, they believe in peaceful transition of power, they believe in elections and so on. They believe in the institutions, they believe in the freedom of press. All these ideas that the Ba'ath Party refused genuinely. Now again, the other thing I would like to say to my good colleague Mr. Abdelbari is that The achievements of the scientific achievement or medical achievements in Iraq was not done by the Ba'ath Party, was done by the individual, Iraqi individual men and women and scientists. And by the way, we uphold the same values.
On that particular
within
point,
society
Saad
of
al-Mattalibi,
equality.
let me just remind you that hundreds, if not thousands, of Iraqi scientists, as well as professors and even university presidents, they have fled the country, some of them simply because they were targeted because they are Baathists. So there is a measure here that the brush with which the Iraqi government has brushed the Ba'ath Party has touched everybody.
No. That is not entirely true. What has happened, there was a vicious attack against scientific development and all walks of life, really, in Iraq. Many people fled the country. I mean, mechanics and simple carpenters fled the country. I mean, were they Baathists? No, there was a huge attack on all development in Iraq. This led a vast sector of society to leave Iraq.
I'm surprised. Dr. Saad is a highly educated person, and I believe he is not actually reflecting what's happening on the ground in Iraq. There are at least 500 scholars were assassinated in the new Iraq. The middle class, which is supposed to rebuild Iraq, actually non-existent. Most of them left the country. They are working now in the Gulf or take refuge in Europe. And you know, it's sectarianism spreading in Iraq now. You know, 4 million displaced, a million widow there, about 4 million orphans. I think this is, you know, is this the achievement of a new Iraq, which the new Iraqi rulers are proud of? When we talk about accountability, you know, who shall we actually judge here? Who shall we charge here? When the whole country dismembered under the pretext of the Baathification, which is a very ugly word. So I think we should admit, you know, the Baathists will be seen as angels in comparison what's happening in Iraq now. I've never been a Baathist. I will never be a Baathist. But actually, you know, the whole of a country dismembered, destroyed, sectarianism, women actually in very bad situations, and democracy. What kind of democracy if people cannot have water or electricity or education, or they are not safe in their houses?
Well, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have education, they had only war and mass graves in Saddam's time, in the Ba'athist time. What we are trying to say is that what started 35 years ago, we today pay the price for it. Democracy is not about only getting clean water and good health to people. Democracy, of course, include this, but also include the freedom of speech, including the right to choose our leaders. I can today criticize my own government and not be punished or executed for it. And I refuse to accept that everybody left Iraq is a Baathist. This is a very dangerous accusation. Many people, one of them is my uncle, left the country because the environment in Iraq was very dangerous. Gangs were roaming the streets in 2006, 2007, killing people. And those scientists you're talking about, many of my very good friends who are professors at Baghdad University, they were killed, and they were not Baathists, and they were not even from that sect. They were from this sect.
Dr. Saad, you know, democracy is good governance. If we see the situation in Iraq, there is no good governance. When Iraq is the second most corrupt country on earth, according to the International Transparency Organization, it means, you know, there is no good governance, and democracy did not produce what the Iraqi were waiting for, to have a good government, to have accountability, to have actually transparency, to have good services, to have the middle class there. Yes, you know, when you say not everybody who left Iraq was a Baathist, this is affront to the new regime in Iraq, because it means neither the Baathists nor the non-Baathists are accepting the situation, and they are deserting the country. 4 million actually displaced in Iraq, and it is a fact. So we cannot, you know, there is nothing to be proud of, to be honest. You know, I believe the new regime should admit, you know, they did not produce the good example for the Iraqi people.
Let me change the subject just a little bit, Saad al-Mattalibi. In the last provincial elections, more than 500 people were disbarred from running for office simply because they were labeled as Baathists. Some observers estimate that if the Baathists are allowed to run for this next January's election, more than 40 seats will be their share in the Iraqi parliament. So surely there is some sort of an exclusion, and those people are not necessarily criminals. Those people are not with the blood on their hands.
As I said in the beginning, any individual is allowed to run for the parliament in Iraq.
But then again, I just told you, Saad al-Muttalibi, 500 people were excluded in different governorates simply because they were Baathists.
If you allow me to continue the sentence, those people were saying every individual is allowed, providing they believe in the new national principles, which are democratic values, and again, good striving to reach good governance. This is a fact of life. We are today paying for the atrocities of the past. We need those people, those individuals, to become an integral part of the new Iraq and not cling to the old values and accuse the government of being related to this country and that country and believing that only they could resolve the problems of Iraq. Problems of Iraq is resolved by the participation of all its sons.
If you read the reports from different angles and from different quarters, you will see that the problems of Iraq are mounting. But let me go to Abdul Bari Atwan. The U.S. administration, Abdul Bari, has praised this new law, the Justice and Accountability Law, and said it is going to add towards national reconciliation. I take it you disagree with Obama's administration.
First, it is admission that the previous laws, that the Baathifications was actually a complete failure and it was absolutely counterproductive. So when the Americans stepped in to change these de-Baathification laws, they realized that it is obstacle in front of national reconciliation. So when the parliament endorsed it, still the mentality of revenge is still there. And I believe the Americans committed a grave mistake when they encouraged the change of the name, but not changing actually the attitudes, changing the intention to exclude integral part of Iraqi people to participate on the democratic process. Here I'm really amazed with the American administration, which was saying all the time they want to change Iraq, they want to set a democratic model in that part of the country. If you want to rebuild the country, you need the expertise of those Baathists. And not everybody actually who was member of the Baathist party was adopting fully the ideology of Baath or responsible for the atrocities committed by the leadership. So, people join the Baath party in order to find jobs, in order to participate in rebuilding their countries.
Since you mentioned that the Baathification law issued by Paul Bremer, and I believe that al-Maliki was the deputy head of that commission, and now as a prime minister, by law he's entitled to name his representative at the Commission of the Justice and Accountability. No matter how you cut it, Saad al-Mattalibi, al-Maliki has vested interest in order for this de-Baathification and this accountability to proceed. He is not an impartial person here. Simply because if the Baathists are allowed to run, they are going to take part of the cake of his parliamentary constituency.
The people of Iraq are the people concerned with this issue, not Mr. Maliki. Mr. Maliki is an elected employee of the government. If he is not elected again, he will not serve. He will go back home. This is the system that we were trying to achieve, and to achieve an actual accountability for effect. I'm very glad to report that last year's report on corruption was 37% and now is down to 29%. And I hope next year it will be within the single figures value. So there is a progress, there is movement forward, and the point of the Baathists is that there is no issue with the individuals. We have an issue with those who hold the same ideology.
The Iraqi government, Barry, has paraded several people accused of waging bombing campaigns. They have admitted their guilt, and they said we received orders from senior Baathist members residing in Syria. You are not saying that this is a gimmick by the Iraqi government, are you?
Well, actually, we are used of these kind of gimmick, not by Iraqi governments, but also by the Baathists, by the most of regimes in the Arab world, to put people in front of camera and, you know, force them to make admissions. And we discovered later that the true story is somewhere else. So I'm not really buying these kind of gimmicks simply because it is a repetition and it's a worse the type of acting. We need independent judicial system, which I don't believe is existing now in Iraq or most of the Arab countries. You cannot say after just 2 days of the bombing of the foreign ministry and other ministries that, you know, the Baathists in Damascus were behind that. You know, you have to take your time. You have to investigate. You have to actually look at the evidence, and after that issue, you know, your judgment. But what we have witnessed here, you know, immediately after a few hours of the bombing, you know, the finger of accusation actually waved at the Syrian and the Ba'athist in particular. This is really completely unacceptable, and we thought the new Iraq will be different from the old Iraq, but it seems it is the same. You know, the accusation is already there, and you know, usually they will find the victims and put them in front of television.
The people we have witnessed admitting their guilt, receiving orders from Syria, they are nothing more than just actors paraded by the Iraqi government.
Well, I'm not at liberty to discuss the security issues regarding this particular state. But one thing I can tell you, a number of individuals were captured before the event. Those individuals confessed to a plot will take place. So the security forces were aware of the plot, or a general description of a plot. So an order was issued to many security points to make sure that they look out for such a case. There was a failure in some of the checkpoints which allowed that security breach. The information that we had regarding that particular bombing, we had it in advance of the bombing. The problem was a failure at the security level, on a street level. That was the problem. The people who you called actors, they are individuals, real individuals, confessed to a real crime. I have seen the files myself. I've seen the fingerprints, the DNA, the birth certificates, the money transfers, orders. I have seen it all myself. They're all genuine. And another point I would like to say to our friend Abdul Bari in London, that we do have an independent legal system in Iraq. And we are working to make it even further more independent. And we are strengthening all the apparatus of the judicial system in Iraq. So we are very proud to say...
In the last few seconds remaining to me, Abdul Bari Atwan, let me just phrase the episode. We have about 35 years of rules by the Baathists. Some people say the Baathists are the most organized people in Iraq right now, and if they are allowed to run, they actually achieve a great influence, a great percentage in parliament, and yet they are excluded. Here is the question to you. Without including the Baathists properly, not as now, will Iraq move forward? Will we see progress, or will stagnate as it is now?
Well, actually, it will stagnate. It will stagnate, and the reconciliation will be actually impossible without including everybody in Iraq to the democratic process. I believe the Baathists, yes, they have atrocities, but actually they have achievement. In 1982, the UNESCO gave Iraq a reward for putting an end to illiteracy and for advancing education. So Iraq needs the expertise of the Baathists and everybody in Iraq itself. So I think this deep Baathification or justice and accountability, it is a sign of revenge, a sign of a mentality which would like to keep Iraq stagnated, which wouldn't like to have a secular, a national identity of Iraq and Iraqi people. They want to impose their sectarian way of thinking and ruling, which actually will take Iraq back to the dark ages.
Last comment from you, Saad al-Mattalibi. Will we see an olive branch towards the Baathists in the near future?
No, definitely not. Definitely not for the leaders of those who committed atrocities. Again, I would like to say and reiterate that all Iraqis are included, all Iraqis are invited. Those who were forced into the Ba'ath Party are welcome within the arms of Iraqi society. They are back in Iraq. They are working. Mid-management who were ex-Baathists, they are working in Iraq. We refuse to accept the Ba'ath ideology back into Iraq. Simple and final.
Saad al-Mattalibi, Abdul Bari Atwan, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq.
Thank you.
To watch the show online, please visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.